This is from the Daily Beast. Feds charge 4 Louisville officers, cops, over botched Breonna Taylor raid. At a bombshell press conference on Thursday morning, the feds alleged that the infamously botched raid that led to Breonna Taylor's death was littered with criminal missteps and cover-ups, complete with a secret garage meeting between 2 Louisville Metro Police Department officers. Attorney General Merrick Garland announced that 4 current and former Louisville Metro police officers, former Detective Joshua James, Detective Kelly Goodlett, former Detective Brett Hankison, and Sergeant Kyle Meany, have been arrested and charged with federal crimes, including civil rights violations and unconstitutional use of force. The DOJ alleges that James lied on the search warrant application that led officers to carry out the no-knock raid on Taylor's apartment in March 2020. He wrote in the search warrant that he, quote, verified with a U.S. postal inspector that Taylor's ex, whom police suspected of drug dealing, had been receiving mail at her address. However, an internal investigation found that James had not verified the information with a postal worker himself, but rather relied on another officer's false word. In fact, the officer with whom James spoke, Jonathan Mattingly, was not in contact with a postal inspector either. Mattingly only ever got the information from a different police department. The investigation found not only that James lied about his verification efforts, but that there was never any relevant packages arriving at Taylor's home. Taylor had also broken up with the ex, Jamarcus Glover, some 2 years earlier, her family's attorney said. Moreover, Glover was already in custody at the time of the raid. The charges, Garland says, allege that James, Meany, and Goodlett knew that the information in the warrant was false and then engaged in efforts to create a, quote, false cover story in an attempt to escape responsibility for their roles in preparing the fraudulent warrant. 2 of the officers, Garland said, stealthily met in a garage in the spring of 2020 and, quote, agreed to tell investigators a false story. James and Goodlett also knew, the DOJ alleges, that armed officers would conduct the search, creating a dangerous situation for anyone in the home. According to Garland, the officers who carried out the warrant were unaware of the false statements and were not involved in drafting the warrant application. In a separate indictment, Hankison is charged with 2 civil rights violations related to unconstitutional use of excessive force. The charges allege he fired 10 unnecessary and unlawful shots through a bedroom window and sliding glass patio door, endangering not only Taylor's life, but the lives of her neighbors as well. Hankison was the only cop to be charged over the raid at the state level, but he was found not guilty earlier this year of endangering Taylor's 3 neighbors, a verdict Taylor's lawyer called, quote, a slap in the face. Of the more recent charges, however, lawyer Ben Crump struck a different tone. In a statement, he called it a huge step towards justice. A separate DOJ team is conducting a civil investigation related to the Louisville Metro Police Department as a whole, Garland said, probing whether the department had a pattern of law enforcement misconduct related to excessive force, improper searches, and racially discriminatory policing practice. Officers stormed Taylor's apartment in the dead of night, startling her boyfriend, Kenny Walker, from his sleep. He assumed they were being burglarized, so grabbed his legally owned handgun and fired a warning shot down the hallway that hit Mattingly in the leg. That prompted officers to unleash a hail of bullets into the apartment. Officers shot Taylor, a 26-year-old EMT, 8 times, and she bled out on the floor as they tended to the injured Mattingly. No drugs were ever found in the apartment. The Louisville Police Department fired James in January 2021. He appealed his dismissal, but lost the case. Hankison was also fired from the department, and Mattingly retired after the raid. Though Crump celebrated Thursday's announcement, he said many victims of police brutality are still seeking justice. He ended his statement with what has become heartbreakingly a familiar refrain, say her name, Breonna Taylor. So, first of all, you don't get to do this often. You have to give Attorney General Merrick Garland credit, I believe. The Department of Justice has not prosecuted many officers. They're prosecuting 4 here. I also want to remind, not to take away from this, but as people should be happy and celebrate that this Department of Justice, which, you know, it is under the Biden administration, so credit to Garland. You can give credit to Biden. that this Department of Justice did the right thing here. Let's not forget the Department of Justice under President Obama did not prosecute the officers who assassinated, which we saw, Eric Garner. We saw it on tape. I can't breathe. Obama's Department of Justice had the opportunity to prosecute that officer and the officers that stood there around, allowing him to strangle Eric Garner. They did not. And of course, Trump's Department of Justice also didn't prosecute Officer Daniel Pantaleo. So I also want to remind you of Eric Garner. Secondly, I want you to really take a look at what the Department of Justice found here, right? Secret garage meetings. They knew what they were putting on the search warrant were lies. They helped cover it up after the fact. You also have the fact that they did not confirm with the U.S. Postal Inspector, which I reported when I was on the ground in Louisville. They didn't confirm that she was even getting packages from her ex, Jamarcus Glover. Do you really think that, let's say, half of this that the Department of Justice found, that Kentucky Attorney General Daniel Cameron couldn't have found this? Do you really think the Louisville Police Department didn't know about this? Remember, you might forget and smash that like button. We got 220 people watching, only 150 likes. I need every single person to press that like button. Do you really think that the Louisville Police Department was unaware of all this? This is why it's always been laughable. You can't have police investigating themselves. And frankly, in many cases, particularly if it's more conservative states, you can't have even attorney generals of states being involved and handling these prosecutions. Daniel Cameron, who is the Attorney General of Kentucky, he's also a major ally of Mitch McConnell. He lied multiple times when he announced that the grand jury was not going to indict any of these officers. He said that they didn't find that this no-knock warrant was unjustified. He said that they found according to Kentucky law, no violations here. He also lied that this was the grand jury who found this. Well, it is very unusual for grand jury members, it's supposed to be a secret process, to come out and speak. But several grand jury members who were involved with this came out and said the Attorney General of Kentucky was lying, that they weren't even given the option to charge any of these officers with manslaughter. That wasn't given as an option. So this was a cover-up from the start. Of course, you have the systemic racism, corruption. You go to Louisville, you speak with activists like I have, you'll find out very quickly about this police department. This is Kentucky. Obviously, we know the history of Kentucky and white supremacy, which is not so much history. It still exists. But how do you actually trust state police departments, state district attorneys, who, by the way, most district attorneys are in bed with the police department, even though they're supposed to be the basically overseers of the police department, and in many cases, attorney generals. In Minneapolis, fortunately, you had Keith Ellison, who is a progressive attorney general, who stepped in when the district attorney in Minneapolis, I think, wanted to charge George Floyd with a third-degree manslaughter, if I remember it correctly. Well, Attorney General Keith Ellison stepped in and said, no, and brought it up to second-degree manslaughter and got a conviction. This Attorney General, a Republican, and I'm not saying all Democratic Attorney Generals are wonderful. This is Keith Ellison we're talking about, a progressive, supported Bernie Sanders, supported Nina Turner. But what I am saying is, why isn't the DOJ investigating Daniel Cameron, who lied? The grand jury came out and said he lied. Why is the Department of Justice investigating, wait a minute, how did we find this? But the Attorney General of Kentucky and his investigators, they didn't find any of this? So this is a victory. It is a victory, and we should celebrate. But to me, it's not the end of it. I want to know, why is there no talk about Daniel Cameron, the Attorney General of Kentucky? Kentucky's also got a Democratic governor. Shouldn't he be speaking out on this? How does the Department of Justice, granted, has more resources than the Louisville Police Department or the Attorney General of Kentucky, but it's not like these things couldn't have been found out if there was a real investigation. And again, just look it up. The grand jury members came out and saying the Attorney General of Kentucky did not give them the option. They didn't have the choice to charge these officers with crimes. For those of you that never saw it, we went, Status Coup went when this was no longer being covered, when everybody had already forgotten in the mainstream media about Breonna Taylor, just like they've forgotten about Flint, just like they don't give a shit about the exploding homelessness, exploding evictions, the economic hunger games that we're all living in. We went twice. We went in the summer of 2020 when the pandemic was in the beginning, and we went in the summer of 2021. These stories weren't going to go viral. I didn't think going to Louisville to speak with Breonna Taylor's aunts was going to make us money. Frankly, we probably lost money on that trip. But I felt it was important because there was a cover-up just hiding out in the open. And at that point, it was not clear whether the Department of Justice was going to do anything. I want to play part of my interview with Breonna Taylor's aunt, Bianca Austin, who, by the way, was arrested while protesting in Akron a few weeks ago for the police assassination of Jayland Walker. We were recently in Akron and interviewed activists about that 25-year-old black man who was shot 47 times while running away from the police. Let's play just a portion of my first interview with Bianca Austin, who was Breonna's aunt.
Just holding up, taking it one day at a time, just one day at a time. As you can see, we just got through the holiday, so it's definitely, her presence was definitely missed. So, yeah.
You know, we saw in the case of George Floyd, the police first lied about what happened.
Yes.
They said, oh, during a routine arrest, he was in medical distress.
Yeah.
We recently found out that they said that on the police report there was no forced entry. They said no injury.
Yeah.
I mean, two of the officers are still working.
Yeah.
No criminal charges. So here you get to basically assassinate someone while they're sleeping, lie about it, and there's nothing's
still
been
get
done.
paid for it. Yeah.
Well, what are your thoughts on the lies and the cover-up after the fact?
It's definitely an insult to the family. You know what I mean? That's what we was waiting around for, like at least the police report. But, you know, they put that blank sheet of paper out, and, you know, this incompetent police work that they showed, and just the lies from day one. If you've been following the story, you know, they lied from day one, whether it was a no-knock, whether they announced. They shouldn't have been there in the first place. So it's very upsetting. You know, we just trying to stay patient because we want all the details to come out in this case. You know what I mean? We want everybody held accountable. You know, not just those 4 officers, but, I mean, this was a team of people. You know what I mean? Like, this is mind-blowing that this goes on in the city of Louisville, especially to a young woman who was doing everything right. She worked 2 jobs. She owns she had her own house, her own car, you know what I mean? And she didn't get an opportunity to start a family. She didn't get an opportunity to better herself, you know, and level herself up. Like, it's heartbreaking, you know, and we miss her every day.
And not only that, but while this happened, COVID was beginning to break out.
Yes,
she was an EMT worker treating patients.
Yeah, saving lives. Every day, get up. Not from one job, but 2. You know what I mean? So it is, like, we devastated. Like, I don't like, and that's an understatement, it's devastation. It's a nightmare. You know, some days we feel like we're in a twilight zone, and we just want to know, like, why are they doing this to us? Like, why did they do this to her? Like, why do we have to go through this? This isn't right. You know what I mean? Yeah. So we just want answers. We want justice. And from day one, like I said, if we're not going to stop until these people are held accountable.
That was Breonna's aunt, Bianca Austin. That was in 2020 when we did the interview. And, you know, that's also a reminder that Breonna was murdered right in the beginning of COVID. She was treating patients, working nonstop. She was an emergency, an EMT, had no criminal record at all. She was beloved by her family, friends. And They went in commando style. Of course, even put aside the fact that the warrant was bullshit and all these things. If they suspected Breonna Taylor of anything, they could have just called her in during the day, right? You think they would have stormed in in the middle of the night for like Trump Jr., Hunter Biden, name your rich politician's kid, wealthy judge's kid, wealthy CEO's kid? Of course not. There's no reason that this woman should have been approached, much less killed. Thanks for watching, and make sure to tune in to Status Coup's daily live stream Monday through Thursday at 5 o'clock Eastern Time and Fridays at 4 o'clock Eastern Time.